The roads would be a safer place if everyone obeyed the rules.
That's this week on Motoring 97.
TSN's Motoring 97 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And Midas, for new longer-lasting performance friction carbon metallic brake pads.
You know, Rebecca is right. Things would be a lot safer out there if only we would obey the rules. Signal a lane change, stop running yellow lights, and maybe every now and then coming to a full stop at a stop sign. Well, it may be too late to retrain our generation, but as we're about to see this week, the training has already begun to ensure that things might be safer out there by the time Rebecca's generation gets behind the wheel.
Before we can go out and drive the cars, that's what you came here for? Yeah. First, we have to learn some rules of the road, don't we? And these are important because if you can't learn these rules of the road, you can't drive a car. Is that fair? Yeah. All right.
Constable Paul Schmidt has been the officer on duty since 1992, when the Children's Safety Village was built in Cambridge, Ontario. Children from kindergarten to grade 2 learn all aspects of safety, but the most popular subject is the rules of the road for both drivers and pedestrians.
When you see that light blink, I'm halfway across the road. What should I do now?
Maybe go back.
Oh, is that a good idea to go back? No.
Maybe you should just walk right across. Just keep on going.
I think that's the best idea, isn't it? Just keep on going.
The program, which is totally funded by private donations, attracts close to 14,000 kids a year, and the next school year is already booked solid.
What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember, but what I do, I understand. And that's really the basis of the whole village out here. I can talk all I want, the teachers can talk all they want about safety, but now they have to come out here and actually practice and do it. And this is where they understand it, and this is where they really learn it.
Okay, everybody, we're going to go on our walking tour now.
With the junior kindergartens, we like to leave them until they get to the age of kindergarten, and we start with a walking program and the tour through the village, how to cross the road, how to get on a school bus. The traffic lights behind me, the railroad tracks, police station, the fire station, and of course our telephone here. We teach them how to dial 911 safely and not to play with it. Stop at the white line. Atta girl. Which way are you going now?
I'm going that way.
You go straight, okay? Atta girl. We wait until grade 1 before we do the program with the cars. It's a little different lecture we have. We get into the traffic signals, the stop signs, the red lights, the one-way streets, and teach them what to do and where to do it. And now again, they have to come out and practice it by driving these little cars around. And again, that's where they learn. It's very important for us to come out here and try to correct them. If we don't do that, I think we've wasted all our time in the classroom. So you come out here and you watch them, and if they go through a stop sign, you make sure you take them back and say, you just missed the stop sign. That's where they start to remember and understand, and that's where it sinks in. I've had a lot of parents come back to me after, and they say they have trouble driving down the street themselves now because juniors in their back saying, watch for that yellow light and this kind of thing, and it really kind of awakens the parents up as well. Kind of keeps them on their toes.
Put your foot on the gas, sweetie. Put this foot on the other side, darling. Here, hang on. There you go.
You have to start teaching them as soon as they start understanding. They emphasize the whole safety around strangers here. They teach them about drugs. They teach them about hypodermic needles, traffic signals. Well, my kids walk to school by themselves, so we've gone over these things hundreds of times to follow the safety rules. I think the cars make it a little more fun for them. I don't think there's any such thing as too young.
You learn about how to drive a car, the signs for the road, and what you should do when you're in trouble or when you need help.
Is your mom a good driver?
Yes, but my dad, you know what he does?
What?
He drives through the red lights.
So what are you going to tell him now?
Don't do that.
We run a bicycle program through here, and a number of parents have come out here and watched their children go through on bicycles, and they just said, I can't believe he's that bad. He's not obeying anything. And these are the parents that have trusted their children to go out and drive on the streets already. And they're saying, I'm going to have to back up with him and be a little more careful, because they're just coming out here and they're just on a free-for-all. And I think once they get away from home, that's what they do. You know, they can obey the rules until they get a half a block away, and all of a sudden they're on their own.
And this, because it's a combination of a classroom lesson as well as a hands-on experience, really reinforces the importance of what they learn. That cars are a lot of fun, a very valuable tool to get us around, but also extremely dangerous, both for the driver and for the pedestrian, if both are not very conscious.
I learned about driving today as you should always stop at a stop sign, and whenever it's a red light, you should always stop. And when it has sort of like a sign, it's like a dead end, and you can't go there.
Well, if we can start them here and they can learn at a very early age, just driving the car, okay, they have to stop for stop signs. That's going to carry on to when they get on the bicycle, okay? And I think if we've saved one boy or girl from a serious accident, injury, or even death, I think we've done our job out here. And I there's no way we can ever judge that, but I think we're doing it.
You think you can teach Mommy and Daddy something about driving now, or what do you think?
They already know how to drive.
Are they good drivers?
Yes.
What can you learn in the backseat of a limo? Coming up later on Kenzie's Corner.
Nissan are billing this second-generation Altima as the affordable luxury sedan, not a family car. Are they California dreaming? We intend to find out. In restyling the Altima, Nissan have accomplished a couple of things. First, they shed some of the baby fat and therefore the prepubescent look, and second, they've brought the look closer to that of the Maxima. They've also added some much-needed character with some well-placed cut lines and increased the torsional rigidity by about 20%, the latter being accomplished by strengthening the joints and the A and B pillars. Nissan also added an undercarb brace in the spare wheel well, all of which are moves for the better. Beneath the hood, power still comes from a 2.4-litre inline-4, however the engine has been significantly reworked. Power rates at 150 horsepower and 154 pounds-feet of torque. As well as being less buzzy and much smoother in operation, the biggest advantage to the rework is that more of the available torque is found in the practical range, in other words between 2800 and 3600 RPM. Throttle response is good with 0 to 100k times in the 9-second range, and as you near the red line the engine remains less than raucous. The automatic box has also been upgraded because Altima now uses the same 4-speed auto as the Maxima. The shifts are smooth, the kickdown prompt, and the ratios spaced such that you stay well within the revised power band. As before, there is an on-off switch for the overdrive. In hilly terrain, this item is worth its weight in gold because it eliminates the annoying hunting between gears. On the original Altima, the cut line for the rear bumper ran from the light lens down. Well, that presented a problem because during the manufacturing process, trying to align those two edges, well, it's difficult. The other thing, with time, the two edges tend to warp, so it ends up looking ugly. Well, on the 98 edition, they've cut it horizontally. Now, this has two advantages. Obviously, because of the natural cut line, it looks clean throughout the vehicle's life. The other advantage is perhaps more significant. If you get rear-ended, the chances are you'll only lose this lower plastic panel and not the rear fender. The suspension still features struts and coil springs at all four corners, Nissan's Super Tow Control rear design and sway bars at both ends. However, it's been retuned for improved ride comfort
and is now based upon a wider track. To attain the latter, Nissan lengthened the lower control arms. The rework has its good points and its bad. On the plus side of the ledger, the ride comfort is significantly better, and the wider track and correspondingly larger footprint adds to the overall stability. However, in improving the ride quality, Nissan have sacrificed much of the fun-to-drive aspect of the Altima's character. Now you must go for the SE model if you want a firmer European-style charge into the corners type suspension.
Normally when you lock the Altima, the horn blows. However, at 1 in the morning you don't want that, so simply depress both the lock and unlock buttons until the turn signals flash. Now you're in the silent mode.
Stopping power comes from a front disc rear drum setup with anti-lock that requires 121 feet to stop from 80k. The ABS features better pedal feel and less kickback when activated. That said, Nissan still make it an option on some models. Now, given their affordable luxury slogan, they need to make it standard across the board. Inside, the GLE is nicely attired, featuring all the right equipment. From the power windows, locks and mirrors to the 8-way driver's seat, everything is in place and easily reached and operated. The instrumentation is complete, the glove box enormous, and this comes in spite of the airbag, which, by the way, is of the new Generation 2 depowered variety. In increasing most of the dimensions on this Altima, the biggest beneficiary is going to be the person sitting in the back. There's about a ½ inch more headroom, which it needed. There's more knee room, plenty of toe room. However, what impressed me is the fact they've moved the top of the greenhouse out, so you no longer feel claustrophobic sitting back here. Sadly though, the radio still resides below the climate controls. That said, it does pump out quality sound. And as is fitting for a family car, the trunk is enormous and features split folding rear seats. It's just too bad that Nissan seem incapable of making the whole full-sized.
What a way to end a test drive. Nissan have done a good job with the new Altima. They've added luxury whilst reducing the price on average by about 5%, so they do have an affordable luxury sedan. That said, if they insist upon aiming for the middle-income 50-something buyer, they're going to find an awful lot of lines in that pond. Mercedes-Benz SLK, Porsche Boxster, BMW Z3. I don't think I need to say any more. Time to update our long-term CR-V, Honda's first homegrown sport utility. We've clocked about 6,000 kilometers so far, and a couple of things stand out. First, there is nothing truck-like with this vehicle. It drives like a car. And so it should, considering the wagon body is simply placed on the Civic four-wheel drive model sold in Japan. The CR-V also feels much roomier than its biggest competitor, the Toyota RAV4. The 2-liter engine produces a spirited 126 horsepower, but if towing is required, it may come up a bit short. Could there be a 6-cylinder in the future? We'll be checking out the CR-V's off-road ability on a future update.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns cooling systems. Remember that in a cooling system you have a thermostat that maintains a minimum operating temperature of the engine of roughly 195 degrees Fahrenheit. But in the summertime, the ambient temperature and the load that you put on that vehicle will make the cooling system operate in excess of 200 degrees. 210, 220 degrees even on some cars is not uncommon. Now here's the tip. When you come off the highway, you've been driving the car hard, it's a good idea to allow the cooling system to catch up, so to speak. Allow it to bring that engine temperature down a little bit before you shut the engine off. It's especially important with turbocharged engines for a couple of reasons. First of all, the turbocharger in a turbocharged engine spins in excess of 100,000 RPM. You need to allow it a minute or so to spool down or slow down to an idle speed before you take away the cooling and the lubrication. Same thing for a normally aspirated engine. It's a good idea to allow it to idle for at least 10 or 15 seconds minimum after you come off the highway. For example, at a highway gas station, you pull in, you've just been going in excess of 100 kilometers an hour. Just slow down, ease up a little bit for that last kilometer or two, and then let the engine idle for a little bit before you shut it off. That's your Midas tip of the week.
With temperatures averaging around 40 below Celsius and not a ski mountain in sight, Thompson, Manitoba would hardly seem a popular winter destination, and it's not, unless you happen to be a car manufacturer like the Ford Motor Company. It was the extreme cold temperatures that brought Ford and a fleet of Windstars to Thompson this past winter.
Well, we're trying to test these things in extreme environments, especially places where we actually sell vehicles. And if we do all of our stuff in the States, we might cover the 20 below Fahrenheit type stuff that you would have in Fargo or northern Minnesota or upper Maine, but we don't take on the extremes of Canada. We do sell quite a few vehicles in Canada. In fact, the Windstar is very popular in Canada.
The fact that we are a cold community, and we decided that we would market our cold weather, and people thought that that was sort of a novel idea. However, we were able to do that, and we were able to pretty well have the temperatures that people would like to do some cold weather testing, and in particular the Ford Motor Company. And we have encouraged them to come in here and see what we have to offer. And Ford has responded, and they have a very strong presence in our community, and I believe that they're very happy with the cold weather we have here, and we are marketing it.
I wished I had a beaker of some oil here, some transmission oil, because if I turned it over, it basically wouldn't move. And if it doesn't move, then you can understand what it's doing to your transmission or to your engine. Things just don't function very well at these temperatures.
What we're trying to do is show the benefits of traction control on the vehicle vis-a-vis not having traction control. It's a gravel road, but it's all covered with hard-packed snow and some ice. And what they're doing is they're climbing up the hill with and without traction control.
Up here, you really get to know what the needs are, because if the needs aren't met, something's not working. And if it's not working, and you can see we're out here, and there's a vehicle we saw this morning that somebody had to abandon, that's a long ways from anywhere.
Well, we're back here at the Kids Safety Village in Cambridge, Ontario. I wonder if the young Bill Gardner had this kind of a setup when he was this age. How about it, Bill?
Brad, are you insinuating that I'm old? I'll tell you, my memories of things mechanical at that stage of my life go back to my dad taking me for a ride on the farm tractor while he was driving, and that was probably anything but safe. So I think what those kids are doing there today is a great thing. In any case, what I want to talk about this week is timing belts. That's a part that's particular to engines with overhead camshafts. That's a lot of today's cars. Almost all of today's compact and subcompact cars, some intermediates, most sporty type cars. In any case, a lot of today's cars with timing belts. And what we've done today, we took one of the courtesy cars from the shop and we've pulled it apart such that we can get a good look at the timing belt. And in this particular car, it happens to be one of the very few cars in existence where the timing belt faces the front of the engine bay. And also, it's one of the few cars that we can actually run the engine with the rad and lots of other parts already out of the way. We've jury-rigged a couple of things here so that we're going to be able to start the engine up and you can see the timing belt going around. Now down here at the bottom of our engine compartment is the crankshaft pulleys right here. In behind it is the nose of the crankshaft, and in behind that pulley is the crankshaft sprocket. That's the one that drives our timing belt. Here's the timing belt. You can see both sides of it right here and here. I've got to be careful I don't touch it. Now up here is the camshaft sprocket, and remember that the timing belt drives the camshaft and synchronizes it with the crankshaft. Okay, shut it off, please. Now it's important that it's synchronized because off of our crankshaft we have the connecting rods and pistons. The pistons are flying up and down in the engine, and up here, driven by the camshaft, are the valves. Now the valves are opening towards the pistons, and it's important that the two are synchronized because in most engines there isn't clearance between the piston at top dead center and the valve at full valve opening. So they need to be synchronized so that all the valve opening and closing events are timed or synchronized with the crankshaft position. And that's the job of these cogs or teeth on the belt. Keeps it synchronized, the crankshaft and camshaft synchronized, and the cogs also serve to propel or drive the camshaft sprocket. There's a fair amount of torque required to turn that because the camshaft is trying to open all the valve springs in the engine. Now, the reason we've got this one apart today is the fact that this belt has gotten a little bit contaminated with some oil. When I wipe it, you can see a little film of oil coming off on my fingers. Now over here, you can see some of it is being slung off to the side and built up on our water pump. And that's the reason why we have to service this one today. Now if any engine fluids escape, For example, if our water pump right here leaks antifreeze onto the belt, that can soften it and cause these cogs to easily shear off. Or if engine oil, as this is the case here today, gets on the belt, that'll soften it up and shear the cogs off as well. Now, in the case of this particular car, it's as simple as towing it in and replacing the belt if the belt breaks or comes off. However, in any of those cars that don't have clearance between the pistons and valves, it's a tow-in, it's a new timing belt, and then you have to tear the cylinder head off and basically do a valve job on it and replace all the bent valves. So it gets really costly. When you think of a 4-cylinder 16-valve engine, there's the possibility of bending all 16 valves when that timing belt breaks. So if you look in your owner's manual and you see that they've listed replace timing belt at predetermined intervals somewhere in the 100 to 140,000 kilometer range, don't overlook it, because if you do, the belt may break and then you're going to have that damage to the engine. So it's something you want to think about if you're trying to cut corners or save money. That's one area you don't want to do it. Now, they always usually build some safety margin in there. If they tell you to change the belt at 96,000 kilometers, it doesn't mean that it breaks right then, but don't totally overlook it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 97.
A portion of Motoring 97 is brought to you by the Solder Seal Gunk family of automotive products, makers of Puncture Seal Gold and Liquid Wrench.
Coolest ride in the world? Well, that would have to be a stretched limo. You know, the best part is watching people stare into the thing trying to figure out who it is. Is that Graham Fletcher? Nope, it's only me. Okay, driver, carry on. I mean, you look at all the room and the luxury, and got your telephone in here, and some of them have TV sets, and there's one in Los Angeles that even has a hot tub. I've not been in that one yet, but I'm open to offers. But you might wonder, it's distinctly uncool to wear a seatbelt in a limo. But there's 3 members of the Detroit Red Wing organization that wish they hadn't thought that way not so long ago. They'd done just about everything right. They were going to a party and the new alcohol was going to be served, so they didn't take their own cars. They hired a stretched limo. Hey, they've just won the Stanley Cup. They can afford it. But on the way home, the driver made a huge mistake, whacked a tree with tragic consequences. Now you might think, what kind of anal retentive jerk would wear a seatbelt in a stretched limo? Well, me for one. I mean, I don't trust anybody's driving as much as I trust my own, and yet when I'm driving, I always wear a belt. Why wouldn't I wear a belt when somebody else is behind the wheel? And think about this. Do your kids, your teenage kids, do they rent stretched limos for the senior prom? Do they wear their seatbelts? What about when you're in an airport shuttle van or on an intercity bus or even a school bus? They all have seatbelts. Does anybody use them? Think about it. I mean, you might think, well, the drivers are trained professionals. Yeah, well, the driver in that Red Wing limo, his license was under suspension. I can't wait till the insurance company lawyers get through with that guy. There's a tendency for us to think that just because we're in a commercial vehicle, we're somehow immune. But as we're forced to say on family television, stuff happens, and it can happen to any kind of vehicle. So no matter what thing you're driving in or riding in, do yourself a favor, protect yourself. I'm Jim Kenzie, and I've always wanted to say this. Home, James.
Brad is in the craft room, learning the rules. Join us next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them. Smile.
We have a problem in this country. There's more than 100 million liters of used oil that go into the ground each year. And we have a new program that we believe will help solve this important issue.
TSN's Motoring 97 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And Midas for new, longer-lasting performance friction carbon metallic brake pads.